Hello, hello, hello. Let's get started. Chapter 10. All About Avery. "I want to see you, and you," said Avery, walking on the stage and pointing in turn at Derrick, Ariel, Woolruff, and Mandelbrot. "Is there some place in this rather grandiose structure where we can meet in private?" Almost immediately Derrick decided there was something he didn't like about the man. No, he had to take that back. Something about Avery made Derrick feel uncomfortable and uncharacteristically meek. Perhaps it was Avery's air of cool superiority, or the manner in which he assumed his authority would be taken for granted. Even so, Derrick decided that cooperation was his best option for the moment. Avery must have gotten here somehow. His key to perihelion could take Ariel away. Or perhaps his ship would be large enough for more than one person, so at least Ariel would have the chance to get the medical help Derrick had so far been unable to provide. For that reason, if for no other, Derrick steeled himself and said, "We can go to my dressing room. Backstage." Avery nodded, as if deeply considering the serious ramifications of the suggestion. "Excellent." In the room, Avery calmly demanded to know who everyone was and how they had gotten there. Derrick saw no reason to conceal the truth, at least the greater portion of it. He told Avery how he had awoken, bereft of memory, in the survival pod on the mining colony, how he had discovered Ariel, and how they had made their way to Robot City. He described his encounter with the alien who had instructed him to build Mandelbrot, and how Woolruff had broken away from her servitude. He told Avery how he had deduced the flaw in the programming that was causing the city to self-destruct by expanding at an insupportable speed, how they had found a murdered body that was an exact duplicate of Derrick, and how he and Ariel had saved the marooned Jeff from becoming a paranoid schizophrenic for the rest of his life when his brain had been placed in a robot's body. Finally, he recounted what little he had learned about Lucius, and how Lucius had created Circuit Breaker the same night of the robot's untimely demise. "That's when I decided to put on a performance of Hamlet," said Derrick, "in order to uncover the killer. But so far it seems my schemes have had no effect on the robot Canute, so I still have no idea why it did what I suspect it did. I have no proof, however, that even my theory is correct. I guess when all's said and done I just hadn't thought things through enough." Avery nodded, but said nothing. His expression was rather stern, but otherwise non-committal. Derrick really had no idea of how Avery was reacting to the chronicling of all these events. "So, you programmed the city all by yourself?" said Ariel casually. She was sitting on a couch with her legs crossed, still in costume. The effect was rather disconcerting, since although she had dropped her character completely, Derrick was still visually cued to think of her as Ophelia. "I'll bet you never suspected for a moment that it would take on all these unprecedented permutations." "What I suspected would happen is my business," replied Avery as tonelessly as a robot. "Is that rudeness necessary?" said Woolruff, "especially to one who did so much to preserve your invention?" "Preserve it?" said Avery incredulously. Suddenly he began pacing back and forth across the room in an agitated fashion. "It remains to be seen whether my designs have been preserved or not. One thing is clear, though, and that's that something unusual is going on, something I think you have made even worse." "Forgive me if I may seem presumptuous," said Mandelbrot, who was standing next to the doorway, "but logic informs me that it is your absence that has had the most undesirable effect on the city. My master and his friends did not wish to come here or to stay, and they have dealt with the developments as best as they knew how. Indeed, logic also informed me that perhaps your absence was part of your basic plan." Avery glared at the robot. "Close down," he said curtly. "No, Mandelbrot, you shall do nothing of the sort. That is a direct order." Derrick looked at Avery. "He is mine, and his first allegiance is to me." Avery smiled. "But all the other robots in the city owe their first allegiance to me. I could have them enter and dismantle him if I wished." "That is very true," said Ariel. "But what would you say if I told you that one of your robots has a desire to be a stand-up comedian?" Woolworth said, "Whenever hear joke, know first and true meaning of suffering." "I have no qualms about attesting to that," said Mandelbrot. "You're irrational, all of you," Avery whispered. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that," said Ariel. "I see," said Avery. "I know you, the Auroran who had the liaison with a spacer." "And I was contaminated as a result," said Ariel. "Does this mean I've become famous? I'm not ashamed of what I did, but then again I'm not especially proud of my disease either. I'm slowly going mad and I've got to get off this world to obtain the proper medical attention." "I could use some myself," said Derek. "I'd like to know who I am." "Naturally," said Avery, but he said nothing else, and the others waited for several seconds, each thinking that he would have add the words they hoped to hear. "But I have other plans," he finally said offhandedly. "What other plans?" Derek exclaimed, making a frantic gesture. "What could possibly be more important than getting Ariel to a doctor?" But Avery said nothing. He merely sat down in a chair and crossed his legs. He rubbed his face and then ran his hand through his hair. His brows knitted as if he were concentrating deeply, but exactly what about remained a mystery. "Excuse me, Dr. Avery, but being examined by a diagnostic robot was no help," said Ariel. "I need human attention as quickly as possible." "Perhaps a diagnostic robot native to the city will better know what I'm looking for," said Avery, "which, after all, is half the battle when it comes to medicine." "Unfortunately, Dr. Avery, that seems not to be the case," said Mandelbrot. "Mistress Ariel was examined by Surgeon Experimental 1 and Human Medical Research 1 during the recuperation of Jeff Leong from his experimental surgery. They were able to diagnose only that her illness was beyond their abilities of diagnosis and treatment. They have not been affected by the strangely intuitive thinking that is rapidly becoming endemic in this place, possibly because they were first activated after the near disaster from which Master Derek saved Robot City." "You're sure of that?" Derek asked. "Not as to the cause, but that they have remained as they were, yes. I have maintained regular contact with them," the robot responded. "They are working on the blood and tissue samples that Mistress Ariel left with them, but have made no breakthroughs." "Then I was right." Derek pounded a fist into his other hand. "The only way we can make any progress on a cure is if we add one of the intuitive robots to the medical team." "I don't think so," said Avery coldly. "In fact, all this so-called intuitive thinking is going to come to a halt rather quickly, as soon as I figure out how to stop it. It's too unpredictable. It must be studied under controlled conditions, strictly controlled conditions, without robots running around telling jokes." "That's just too bad," said Derek. "Ariel is going to be cured one way or the other, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Avery's eyes widened. Staring silently at Derek for several moments, he rapped his fingers on the make-up table and crossed and uncrossed his feet. The actions weren't nervous, but they were agitated. "Friend Derek, this city is mine. I created it. I own it. There is no one who understands it better than me." "Then you should be able to explain quite easily some of the things that have been going on here," Derek snapped. Avery dismissed the notion with a wave. "Oh, I will, when it's convenient." "Is that why you created it?" Woolworth asked pointedly, her lip curling. "And I can dissect you if I wish," replied Avery evenly. "The fact that you're the first alien in human captivity, almost demands it as the proper scientific response." "Don't even think about it," said Derek. "First, Woolworth isn't in captivity. She's our friend. We won't let you do so much as X-ray her without her express permission. Understand? The robots accept me as their primary master, and I bet they've already decided that she's inhuman. After all, she doesn't look remotely or act human. But she's as intelligent as a human, and a robot would certainly be influenced by that," countered Derek. "Your robots just might find themselves unable to complete your orders." "Only the more intelligent ones," said Avery. "There are many grades of intelligence here, and I can restrict my orders to the lowest forms, in the eventuality of any conflicts in that area. "I think you're underestimating his ability to take control," countered Ariel for Derek. Avery smiled. "Your friend seems to have great confidence in you," he said to Derek. "I hope it is justified." "I wouldn't have gone as far as I have without some ability to turn an unfortunate development around to my advantage," said Derek. "He's had help," said Woolruff. "I, too, have assisted him as much as robotically possible," said Mandelbrot, "and shall continue to do so as long as I am functioning. Thanks to Master Derek, I have learned much of what human beings mean by the word 'friend.'" Avery nodded. He scrutinized Derek with what appeared to be a peculiar combination of pride and anger. It was as if Avery could not make up his own mind about how he felt about this crew, and what he wanted to do with them. Derek had the distinct feeling that this man was flying without a navigation computer. "How did you get here?" asked Derek. "That is my business and none of yours." "Did you perchance find a key to perihelion? In that case it wouldn't inconvenience you in the least to permit Ariel and me to use it. I would return as soon as she was being taken care of." "I don't know that, and in any case your suggestion is immaterial. I have no such key." "Then you've arrived in a spacecraft," said Derek, forcing the issue in an effort to do exactly what he had been doing since he'd awakened in the survival pod, turn things around to his advantage. "Where is it?" Avery laughed uproariously. "I'm not going to tell you." "It is ironic, is it not," said Mandelbrot, "that humans who depend so much upon robots to adhere to the three laws cannot be programmed to obey them?" "This one exists outside the laws of your kind," said Woolruff. Avery regarded the alien in a new light. "If what you're saying means what I think it does, then you are absolutely correct." "Is this how you get your kicks?" said Derek. "By jeopardizing the lives of innocent people?" Now a light of an entirely different sort blazed in Avery's eyes. "No, by disregarding the lives of innocent people. The only thing that matters is my work, and my work would never get done if I allowed my behavior to be restricted by so-called humanitarian considerations. Is that why you left your city for so long? To get your work done, to start other colonies?" Derek asked. "I was away, and that's all you need to know." Avery put his hand in his pocket, pulled out a small device and pointed it at Mandelbrot. The device resembled a pinwheel, but it made a strange hissing sound when it moved, and the sparks, instead of coming out of the wheel, came out of Mandelbrot. Ariel screamed. "What are you doing to him?" Derek asked, rushing to his robot's side. Woolruff squatted, and her hind quarters twitched as if she was about to make a leap at Avery. Avery looked at her and said, "Careful! I can make it easier on him, or I can make it worse." Woolruff straightened up, but she warily kept her eye on Avery, searching for an opportunity to strike. Derek was so angry that his intentions were the same, though he was hoping he wasn't being that obvious about it. But at the moment he was preoccupied with trying to keep Mandelbrot standing, or at least leaning against the wall, though he wasn't sure what difference it would make. Mandelbrot quivered as the sparks spat out of his joints and every opening in his face. His pseudo-muscular coordination was in an advanced state of disruption. His arms and legs flailed spasmodically, and an eerie moan rose from his speaker grill like a ghostly wail. Derek pushed him flat against the wall and was struck several times by the robot's uncontrollable hands and elbows. Despite Derek's efforts, however, Mandelbrot slid onto the floor, and Derek sat on him, trying to keep the writhing robot down. But Mandelbrot was too strong, and finally it was all Derek could do to get out of harm's way. Avery, meanwhile, calmly continued to point the device at the robot. "Don't come any closer. I can make it worse. I can even induce posteronic drift." "What are you doing to him?" Derek repeated. "This is an electronic disruptor and a device of my own invention," Avery replied with some pride. "It emits an ion stream that interferes with the circuits of any sufficiently advanced machine." "You're hurting him," said Ariel. "Don't you care?" "Of course not, my dear. This is a robot, and hence he has only the rights that I prefer to dispose." bestow upon him. "Think not!" growled Woolruff. "I can press a button faster than any of you can move," said Avery warningly. "Why are you doing this?" Derek asked. "Because I do not wish this robot to interfere. You see, I have stationed some hunter robots outside this theater. They await my signal even as we speak. When I alert them, they will capture you and take you to my laboratory, where I shall drug you for an advanced truth serum and learn everything your mind has to tell me. Will the serum help me remember who I am?" "Derek!" exclaimed Ariel, shocked. "I seriously doubt it. Unfortunately, the serum isn't quite perfected yet. It's another invention of mine, and I confess there's a possibility that it might actually jumble things up a little more for you. For a time, anyway. You may take comfort in the fact that the damage won't be permanent." Derek nodded. He looked at Mandelbrot on the floor. "Sorry, old buddy," he said. "What?" said Avery, a nanosecond before Derek hefted a chair at him. As the scientist ducked, Derek ran out to the door, shouting, "Follow me! We can come back for Mandelbrot later." The trio ran down the hall toward the stage, toward members of the cast and crew. Woolruff was clearly holding himself back to remain with Derek and Ariel. "Out of the way!" Derek shouted as they moved past the robots. He hoped that he could create enough confusion to slow down the robots in case Avery invoked his procedural authority and ordered them to capture him and his friends. "Where are we going?" Ariel asked. "You'll see!" They soon heard Avery angrily shouting something in the background, but by then they had reached the stage. Derek stopped at the center trap door and opened it. "Quick, down here!" "But that leads backstage," protested Ariel. "That's not all," said Derek. "Hurry!" Woolruff leaped inside, and Derek and Ariel were quickly with her. As Derek closed the door they were enveloped in blackness. "We'll have to feel our way around for a few minutes," said Derek as they made their way down the narrow corridor. "Ah, here. This door leads to the underground conduits of the city. Even Avery's hunters will have a hard time searching for us down here." "Not for long," said Ariel. "Can't they trace us with infrared?" "It'll still give us time," said Derek between his teeth, "and we can use that time to figure out our next move. Let's go." "All right," said Ariel resignedly, "but I hope somebody turns on the lights." As it happened, the lights were the one thing they didn't have to worry about. The lining of the underground conduits automatically glowed in the presence of visitors, illuminating the narrow spaces several meters behind and ahead of them. Things were not so elegant here. At first they saw only what they had expected: wires and cables, pipes, circuit banks, transit-sized power generators, oscillators, stress and strain gauges, capacitors, fusion pods, and other various devices that Derek, for all his knowledge in electronics and positronics, could not even name. He stared at the construction in fascination, momentarily forgetting the reason why he and his friends had come here. Derek couldn't help but admire Avery. Surely the man was a genius unparalleled in human history. It was too bad he appeared to have lost his humanity in the process of making his dreams real. "How much further do we have to go?" Ariel finally asked. "I'm getting tired, and it's not too easy to get around in this silly dress." "I don't know," said Derek, breathing heavily. He hadn't realized how tired he was. He had given all his energy to the performance, and probably didn't have too much reserve left at the moment. "We could keep going, I suppose, but I don't see what difference it'd make." "More between you and your pursuers, the better," said Woolruff. "First lesson pups learn." "Derek, what's that?" said Ariel, pointing to the illuminated regions ahead. "What's what? Everything looks the same." Woolruff sniffed the air. "Smell not the same." Derek moved up the corridor. As he did so, the illumination moved up with him, and in the distance, just before the corridor was enveloped in total darkness, wires and generators began to blend into an amorphous form. Derek waved the others on. "Let's go. I want to see what's going on." "Derek, we're in trouble. We can't just go exploring just because we feel like it." "I don't know why not. Besides, this corridor only goes in two directions, this way and that way." The further they went, the more amorphous the materials in the conduit became, merging into one another until only the vaguest outlines of generators, cables, fusion pods, and all the other parts were visible. It was as if every aspect of the conduit had been welded into inseparable parts. Derek had the feeling that if he could open one of the generators, for example, what he would find inside would be amorphous fused circuits and wires. "Deeper," he said. "We've got to go deeper." "Derek, things are definitely getting cramped here," protested Ariel. "She's right," said Woolruff. "Further down we go, the more narrower the tunnel. If hunters come, we won't be able to do anything anyway," said Derek. "Look what's happening here. Don't you realize what's going on?" "Looks like the city's beginning to dissolve," said Ariel. "Ah! In actuality the effect is precisely the opposite. The further up we go the more the city begins to coalesce. Understand?" "Are you serious?" "No! The ultimate foundation of Robot City is still further down this conduit. The metacells must be manufactured below, and they're propelled upward in much the same way that water's propelled through a pipe, only more slowly." "Then why are all these phony machines here?" "They're not phony, they just haven't been fully formed yet. The cells probably have to make it through a certain portion of the foundation before they can begin to get their program. You see, the atoms of metal form a lattice in 3 dimensions, which is why metals occur in polycrystalline form, that is, larger numbers of small crystals. The cells in this part of the underground haven't crystallized yet. Ariel?" She had looked away. She was nodding as if she understood his explanation, but her face was perspiring, and she had grown noticeably paler, even in the dim light. Derek reached for her as if to steady her, but she pulled away from him. "Don't," she said, waving him away. "I'm getting claustrophobic. It's too narrow down here. I'm feeling all this weight on top of me." "Don't worry about it," said Derek. "The foundation is secure. Nothing's gonna happen." "What are we going to do if the hunters come?" "They might not be able to find us here. Even with infrared sensors, if the program's not complete in this sector, then it's possible they won't be able to detect us." "Only possibly," said Woolruff. "Even if they don't come, we'll have to leave sooner or later. Then they find us." Now Derek waved them both away. All right, I know all this. I'm sorry." "You could not help yourself." Derek snorted, which was about as close to a self-mocking laugh as he could muster at the moment. It was bad enough that they had come to a literal dead end. They had arrived at the end of the road in more ways than one. How he wished Mandelbrot was with them now. He felt like a callous coward, having left him behind that way. He had left in the hope that he would be able to come back for the robot, but now he feared Avery would dismantle this brain and scatter the parts all over the city, thus making it possible to rebuild him only if all the parts could be found. Derek looked at his open palms. He had put Mandelbrot together with these hands and his brain from the separate parts he'd had available. Now his hands and brain seemed hopelessly inadequate to cope with the problems besetting him. He could not help Ariel. He could not help Woolruff and Mandelbrot. He had been unable to make Canate confess and to bring the robot to whatever kind of justice might be appropriate. Hell, he might not have even have solved the question of who killed Lucius in the first place. Last, but at the very moment the very least, he had been unable to help himself. Woolruff made a gurgling sound deep in her throat. "Derek, a problem." "Another one?" "Oh, yes." Derek looked up to see, at the edges of the darkness above them, the hunter robots advancing. Alright, I hope you've all enjoyed, and enjoy next time. Woo!